watching Sioux City School.
You're watching Sioux City School. You're watching Sioux City School.
I'm just going to spend a few minutes telling you about some of the things Chief Hayden has done since he came to Brockton just a little over 6 months ago. And then I never know what the chief is going to say, so I figure I better cover that now, and then we'll give you a chance to get to know him a little bit better. He's a fascinating guy. A few months ago, the chief coined the phrase, the battle for Brockton, which kind of symbolizes the effort that he's leading. And when our administration came in January, the chief and I shared the view that, Brockton was at a critical time in its history in terms of public safety. And that was, we had to make a decision as to whether we were going to passively allow criminals and drug dealers and gang members to take over control of the city, or we were going to fight back and reclaim streets and blocks and neighborhoods for the good people that live here. And so the chief chooses to fight back. I choose to support him doing that. So the chief has taken this battle for Brockton on a number of fronts. He's really engaged resources into proactive policing. We're on demand. There's a lot of calls, but in spite of that, he assigns officers on each shift to go out and do proactive policing, not waiting for a 911 call, but actually going into business districts and neighborhoods, particularly targeting street-level quality-of-life crimes. Drug sales, public drinking, any quality-of-life crime that they may encounter, and proactively seeking those folks out and making arrests. And that's made a difference already in both business districts and in neighborhoods. The chief and I have both made a commitment to greatly expanding the number of outside video surveillance cameras in the city. I believe that when areas are well lit and they have a video camera on them, they're a much safer space than they were before. And if someone's stupid enough to still commit a crime there, they're going to be arrested and convicted based upon the videotape. And from the city side, I've made the commitment. We've got several buildings a couple downtown school buildings, the downtown parking garage. Mark is in the process of Brockton Community Access, where we are putting outside video cameras recording 24/7, shining on public spaces. And there have already been a couple of arrests, one of them for a homicide, directly off of videotape from cameras. So we're going to continue to expand that. For any of you who own property here in the city, if you think you're in a space, particularly on a main road, an intersection, a business district, I ask you to consider putting 1 or 2 external cameras on the outside of the building and help us, because as we get more and more property owners to do this across the city becomes a safer and safer place. The chief has made a commitment to community outreach, and he recently created a new position in the police department, a community resource or community outreach officer. And he chose an officer that just in a month in this new job has done some great things. A female Cape Verdean officer who's multilingual, who had work experience and a college degree as a social worker before she became a police officer, and she's already filled a very valuable role in the police department interacting directly with the community. The chief has put an emphasis on interagency cooperation. They actually run a weekly intelligence meeting now where about a dozen different law enforcement agencies at the local, state, and federal level send a representative and share intelligence regarding ongoing investigations. And that sharing of intelligence, including surrounding communities, the Web Task Force, and that's already led to several major drug busts where, more than one law enforcement agency had collected some information, but by pooling it together, it became enough to get a warrant and make an arrest. I'll give you a great fast example of that just over this past weekend. The chief has the Brockton detectives, the Brockton gang unit, the Brockton narcotics unit, working very closely with their counterparts in Boston, because we know that there's criminal activity that goes back and forth between Boston and Brockton. And just over this past weekend, we had a significant drug arrest. Working with Boston, Brockton detectives actually had a target under surveillance in Boston, followed him to Abington, where they made a stop and arrested him with over 100 grams of crack cocaine and $12,000 cash. Those drugs were intended to be distributed in the city of Brockton. This was a Brockton guy currently working out of Abington. We like to think he's working out of Abington nowadays because we've made it a little uncomfortable for him in Brockton. But the interagency cooperation works. And then a couple of the things you probably haven't been able to miss, motorcycle patrols. We invested in 8 brand new Harley-Davidson police motorcycles. At any given time, there's typically 4 or 5 of them out on the road. And I've had a chance to witness firsthand what they're capable of doing. They're versatile, they're fast, they can get to any type of situation, have an immediate impact. I listened on the radio last night while they found a lost child. They were able, 5 motorcycles going right into a neighborhood can immediately cover a lot more ground than 2 or 3 cars would have been able to. The motorcycle officers also carry the chief's vision of true community policing, of getting all police officers to interact with the community. The motorcycle officers are very approachable. People approach them constantly and interact with them in a way that they would have never had the opportunity if that same officer was sitting in a police cruiser with the window rolled up and the AC on. So the motorcycle patrols have had a great impact. And then the most recent thing, if you've been down Legion Parkway, is he put up this tower. He came to me about a month ago and said, I've got a relationship with the transit police and they're willing to lend me this surveillance tower. And it goes about 40 feet up in the air and it's got cameras on it. And I said, Chief, go for it if you think it'll make a difference. So he put it at the top of Legion Parkway. It's been up for about a week. And yesterday afternoon, the chief and I visited several business owners on Legion Parkway to ask them what they thought. They told us that about an hour after the tower went up, the people that were routinely selling crack or public drinking in the sidewalks in front of their businesses had all disappeared, and they haven't been back. So I think what we figured out is that there's a great deterrent effect to it besides the surveillance effect. It can have 3 or 4 police officers in it, but it has 3 cameras, 2 kind of regular surveillance cameras, and it also has an infrared camera that can read a license plate at night 2 blocks away. And also provides a live feed back to the station. So it's given us a tremendous opportunity to kind of take this thing for a test drive, and the chief is already trying to convince me that we really ought to have one of these of our own. So I think we're going to be working on that. And the final piece of information I'll share with you is that the numbers don't lie, and I asked the police department to compile the statistics for the first 6 months under Chief Hayden. And this year, under the first 6 months under Chief Hayden, as compared to the same 6-month period last year, felony arrests in the city of Brockton are up 26% for the same 6-month period over a year ago. And I focused on the felony arrests because those are the ones we're really concerned with. Those are the serious crimes, those are the deadly assaults, the shootings, the drug dealers. Those types of arrests are up 26% over the same 6-month period a year ago. So I know that the Brockton Police Department, and I've gained in my 8 months as mayor, I've gained so much respect for, I should say, all of our first responders. When I went to the scene a couple weeks ago of the 12-year-old being struck and killed by a truck, it was one of the most traumatic, horrific scenes you could ever imagine. And I was there for hours, but I kind of stood back a couple times and watched firefighters and police officers and EMTs and our community outreach officer, and all these people just do an incredible job under unbelievably stressful circumstances, providing services to the mother and making sure she didn't get to see what had happened. One of our motorcycle officers taking the young witness under his arm and sitting with him for a couple of hours, keeping in mind what he had just witnessed from just a couple of feet away. So I really have tremendous respect for what the men and women of the police department do, And I really do believe that a lot of the great things they're doing come from the leadership from Chief Hayden. So it's my privilege and my honor to introduce to you our Chief of Police, Bob Hayden.
Okay, good.
I'm going to jump in before Chief Hayden talks a little bit and ask Mort Feinberg, past district governor Mort, to come up here, and we have a little presentation before the chief gives his remarks.
Good. Thanks, Mark.
Chief Hayden, are we on? Chief Hayden, as a retired Navy chief, it gives me great personal pleasure to welcome you in to the great Rotary Club of Brockton, Massachusetts. We have been in business for a long, long period of time. We have done great work on behalf of Rotary. Our Rotarians never say no to any activity that we wish them to participate in. And so it gives me great personal pleasure to welcome you in to one of the great clubs in the world.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much. Thank you.
So what Mort has done is we've made Chief Hayden a honorary Brockton Rotarian. So Mort just gave him his badge.
Yeah.
I'll give you your pin that
Thank
you
you.
can wear proudly, and this is for you as well.
Thank you. I'll wear this with great pride. I may not even take it off tonight when I go to bed, depending on what my wife says. She'll say leave it on. The mayor gave me, a lot of great compliments, and truthfully, any good that's come to Brockton since I've got here comes from the men and women of the Brockton Police Department who were already here before I got here. I was lucky enough to inherit a top-notch police department, high-class, great people. I say that wherever I go because they're intelligent, they're courageous, they're fearless, and they want to work. And they want this city to be better than it was. And they do this every day, risk their lives day in, day out. And I'm very, very proud to be associated with them. I thought I might shift gears a little bit, and I asked the mayor if it would be appropriate to talk about a different subject. And he said, talk about anything you want. Probably like you, I used to sit and watch television and watch reality shows and wonder if they were real, wonder if they were honest. And in 12 years ago, when I was 60, I was one of 18,000 people that volunteered to be on a reality show, and I got picked. And I was picked to be on a reality show called Lost. And the premise of the show was that they, if it's okay, if you'd rather talk about, I think it's interesting. Okay. They asked for volunteers from all over the city to try out for the show, and 18,000 people tried out. And the premise of the show was that they were going to pick 6 people, divide them into 3 teams, give each team a camera person, and at the end of the pick, those people would be taken blindfolded and flown in a plane, small jet plane, somewhere on Earth. They would not know where they were going. They would be taken from the landing place by helicopter to another spot, asked to get out of the helicopter, still blindfolded, and at that point, given a partner. You didn't know who your partner was. You never met these people before in your life. And prior to that, when they get down to about 30 people, it was an NBC television show, national broadcasting, and it was going to be in competition with The Amazing Race. So my wife and I kept getting calls from NBC. We're down to 500 people. We're down to 100 people. We're down to 50 people. Wow, we're down to 25 people. Your husband's been picked. So they flew me to California, not knowing where the other people were. I hadn't met them yet. They gave me still wasn't a real pick. They wanted to give you a psychological test to see whether you were in fact crazy enough to do this. You had to be nuts, and that they weren't looking for a normal person. So one of the tests was a written exam, and they said, listen, nobody's ever finished this exam. This was out in Los Angeles, and nobody's ever finished it, so don't worry if you don't finish it. So I really do try to finish things that I start. And I said, no, it's okay, I'm sure I'll be able to finish it. Well, no, nobody's ever finished it. I said, well, I think I'll be able to finish it. And I saw why they said no one's ever finished it before. Question 5 was this. Little Johnny Ferguson buys a wristwatch on April 17th, 1939. The watch loses 7 minutes every 12 hours. Taking into account leap year, if the watch said 12 noon when little Johnny got it, what will the watch say on August 16th, 2026? Now, most people actually panicked and tried to figure it out. And those are the people they didn't want. And I just wrote down very quickly in bold letters, tell little Johnny Ferguson to buy a blanking Timex. And they then knew that it was a person that would not be dissuaded from getting home from wherever they dropped us by a tree or a buffalo or a band of roving pirates or wherever. We didn't know where they were going to put us. So anyway, when my wife found out I was actually picked for the show, one of her first things that she did was up my life insurance, truthfully, and called some guy to come in and redo the kitchen. Because I was not going to talk to her again until I get back. I was not going to see her, talk to her, no communication. The day came, we had a nice tearful goodbye. They flew me to Cleveland, and they put me in a hotel room. And about 6 or 7 hours later, some guy came up and, 6 or 7 hours later, a guy came up and blindfolded me in the room and took me down to a limousine. I didn't know it was a limousine. Put me in it, starts to drive away with me. And they started fooling around with us right away. He'd park, he'd go, he'd take a right, he'd take a left, he'd park for about an hour before we got to where we were going. And I said, sir, if you can hear me, I have to use the men's room. No answer. You parked. He'd drive away again. Sir, I really do have to go to the bathroom. Nothing. Finally, I said, sir, if you don't pull this thing over and get me to a toilet, I'm going to have to go to the bathroom in the back seat. Just a minute. And I knew he was there then. They put us in the little plane. I met the other people. And the way they picked these people were that they wanted to put people that would have natural animosity or some sparks would fly. They teamed me up with a kid named Freddie from Tennessee. Freddie was a freewheeling, insane boy from Tennessee. Nuts. And they figured put him with the conservative cop. They'll definitely hate each other. It turned out I loved Freddie, almost, not quite from the beginning, but after the first, it took 25 days to get home. After the first week, he became like my son. And he grew up on the thing. He really did. We became very close. But they dropped us off we took the blindfolds off. We're in amazing mountains, hot, mountainous country, beautiful. Had no idea where we were. They gave us $10 before they left, and they gave us the cameraman. We were all dropped in the same place, and they said, goodbye, go to the Statue of Liberty. Now, at night there were no lights, there were no people, there was nothing. Had no idea where we were. Could have been anywhere. It turned out, by the third day, we found a little man walking on the mountain with his daughter, and from conversation with him, he couldn't speak English, but we pointed at the ground, and we named about every country in the world. When we got to Bolivia, he started to smile and said Bolivia. So we were in a remote part of Bolivia, which didn't help too much because we were still on the mountain. The little man got us off the mountain, and that started the most incredible, difficult, most rewarding journey I've ever been on. We were looking to get to Aruba, and we were walking through Caracas, and we saw Naval Academy. So I said, let's go in there and see if we can get some help. So we went in there and we banged on the door, and the fellow came to the gate, and he looked familiar. And when I was the deputy superintendent in Area A, the tall ships came to Boston, and I put on road races for all the captains on the ships. This was one of the captains that was in Boston. And he said, well, what do you guys want? He spoke a little bit of English. I said, well, I'd like you to start up one of those big ships you have over there, one of those big gray ones, and drive us over to Aruba. And we'll get in as close as you can, and we'll jump in and swim into Aruba. Because you got desperate. You get crazy at this point. You were not normal anymore. You were a homeless person that wanted to go home. And he said, I can't do that. And I said, you look very familiar. He says, yeah, you do too. I said, were you in Boston with the tall ships? I was. I said, do you remember a policeman, the deputy superintendent in the Boston Police, put on a road races for you guys and took care of you and drove you all around the city and took you sightseeing? Yeah. Take another look. Oh, my God. I said, you owe me one. Get the ship started. I will do it, he says. So he's actually blowing a boatswain's whistle, and guys are coming out. And he said, before I go, it's only 20 miles to Aruba. He said, before I do this, I have to let the admiral downtown know that the boat's moving. Anytime the boat moves, I have to tell him. I said, maybe one time, just call it a training session. No, I have to tell him. So he gets on the phone, and he's talking to somebody. I heard screaming in Spanish. I heard the word a-hole in English. And this little guy with all kinds of medals came running down and ordered us to be thrown off the base. So now we're back to zero again. So we moved in with some firefighters in Caracas and lived with them. They put us on a banana boat that was going to Aruba, and the boat was broken. We had to wait 2 days, and we got to Aruba, and then we were going to be able to fly to New York from Aruba, and I saw an American Airlines captain walking by getting ready to go to America, and I said, Captain, you look terrible. You had a beard, you smelled, you haven't had a shower for who knows how long. He jumped back. He thought he was going to be assaulted. I said, Captain, I need to ask you a favor. I said, what are the chances that you could get us on the plane with buddy passes? I know that you have 15 buddy passes a year. He says, you want to know what are the chances? 0. I said, well, we're doing a television show. You may never be on it. I have to be honest with you. But I also can't be sure whether or not, he was a handsome guy, whether or not when it does air, every attractive middle-aged woman in the country is going to see you, Captain Smokey Stoga, helping your fellow compatriot Americans on a trip home and want to get to know you better. 3 buddy passes, boom. Now NBC knew where we were at that point. They called my wife, and they flew her to New York just before we got there. We found out we came in 3rd. We were 2 days off the winner. Every time I pass a person on the street that was in worse shape than most of us are, I'd give them $5 or $10. I was sitting down on a wall talking to some of the homeless people down at Perkins Park a couple of days ago, and I really loved them. And I shook hands with them. I hugged them. I told them that we care about as much about you as, rich white people. Freddie became like my son. When Freddie found out I had cancer, Freddie calls me all the time. He comes to my house occasionally. Freddie said, "What's new, Bobby?" "What's new, Bob?" "Yeah." I said, Freddie, I got bad news for you. I got cancer." "What?" "Oh, no, Jesus Christ." Now, that was a Monday. He called. Thursday, I think it was, there's a knock on my door. It's Freddie. He came without telling me, all the way from Tennessee. he had a problem, I just hugged him and kissed him, and he recently had a problem about 2 months, before I got hurt in the last horrible accident I was involved in. Freddie called me and he said he passed the bar in Tennessee, but he wasn't going to be promoted, wasn't going to be made an attorney because they found out that 3 years ago, when he was supposed to attend one of the classes, he had someone sign him in for a class that he didn't attend. They found that out, and they said it was a morals violation, and he wasn't going to be a lawyer, and he blah, 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 blah. He said, will you write a letter for me? I said, no, I'm coming to Tennessee. So I went to Tennessee a couple of days later for the hearing, and I played the cancer card. There were like 6 people there judging Freddie, and I was called as his first witness. And I said, this young man, I've never seen a young boy with more honor and integrity than he has. I judged him 25 days, personal and close up, on a trip that would have made Navy SEALs get nervous. And I said, I gave them I told them a story about who amongst us hasn't screwed up or made a mistake. And I said, when I was in college, I needed a B to graduate. The professor gave me a C. I called him up. I told him I needed a B. He said, too bad. Called him so many times, he gave me the B. And he told me he hated me and I shouldn't do this, but I'm going to do it. 12 years later, the same professor came up to me when I was a policeman in town, Boston, didn't recognize me. I had a motorcycle helmet on. He said his integrity would be challenged. And I said, he came up to me and he said, I think my car's been stolen. And I said, it might have been towed, sir. And he says, well, will you check? Sure, certainly. I checked and it was towed. And he says, what do I do now? And I said, well, you have 2 choices, sir. He still didn't know who I was yet. I said, you can get a taxi for about $30, go down to Southampton Street. There's a small alley there, you walk down there. There's a dog that bites people, be careful of him. There's a tow shop down there. If you get past the dog, you have to pay cash for the tow, and you have to pay cash for the ticket. It'll probably be about $200. I said, shall I call you a taxi? He says, well, what's the other one? I said, the other one is I call you a cruiser, and I tell them to take you down there. Tell them that Sergeant Hayden sent you. I'll call them ahead of time. Tell them to rip the ticket up, which we don't do anything like that in Brockton, ever. I said, rip the ticket up, and to give you the car back for free. I said, which one would you like? He said, I'll take option B. And I said, I took the helmet off, and I said, I'm really surprised you did that, Professor Smith, because I know you're a man of great honor and integrity. And he said, Hayden. So I told that story to the Tennessee board of whatever they were, and I ended it with, please don't send the poor old man back to Boston with cancer, not knowing whether Freddie became an attorney. Before I got to the elevator, they came running out and said, Mr. Hayden, don't go, he's all set, he's okay. And I said, oh, thank you, and I just went home. So I met so many wonderful people, so many great adventures. I'm having great adventures in Brockton, meeting wonderful people, and I'm dedicated, for as long as I'm here, to cleaning the city up for you and making it comfortable and safe for you. And it's not an easy job. It's kind of hard, actually. But the cops and I have bonded. They're doing a phenomenal job. We have a wonderful mayor who subscribes to my theory of law enforcement. If you're a bad guy, you like to bother women, shoot guns, bother children, rape people, drink in the street, you're not welcome. And you will be seeing the back of a wagon that says Brockton Police. And please leave town, one way or the other. And it's a tough approach, but that's what a city needs. That's kind of needs to make a comeback. It's working wonderfully, I think. We'll have some blips and disruptions, but with the mayor and his philosophy, with myself, and with the good, wonderful police men and women we have here, I promise you that it'll be a little bit better, if not a lot better, when I leave than before I got here. Thank you.